Actors don't just walk on set one day and start shooting. They go through a long audition process first that always ends up with the crucial step, the screen test. More often than not, these tests are used to see just how much chemistry two actors share. And while sometimes they are serious, sometimes they are beyond funny. And there is nothing funnier than two great actors put into a room together and let loose in front of the camera, as these amazing and often completely hilarious screen tests make perfectly clear. Guardians of the Galaxy is not only an awesome comic book movie, but one of the funniest movies ever made in the genre. Of course, that would not be the case without the stellar cast, who so perfectly bring these characters to life. Anyone who was a fan of the TV comedy Parks and Rec knew that Chris Pratt was absolutely hilarious, but the fact that wrestler-turned-actor Dave Bautista could hold his own alongside him was one of the biggest surprises of them all. But as soon as we saw this amazing screen test, in which we see the two actors improvising off one another in character, we knew exactly why James Gunn cast both of them. Chris is obviously perfect for Star-Lord, but Bautista is absolutely amazing and completely in character as Draxx already. He totally nails the character's extremely literal approach to the world and manages to make us laugh with his totally serious intensity. Their chemistry is immediately perfect, and we would watch another 100 hours of the two of them just rifling off one another if we could. Spider-Man has, ever since he was first brought to the big screen by Tobey Maguire, been one of the most coveted roles for a young actor in Hollywood. So when it came time to start auditioning new Spideys for The Amazing Spider-Man in 2012, the best of young Hollywood came out for the role. Before it went to Andrew Garfield, a handful of others got painfully close to scoring the part, including Josh Hutcherson. And we can see why. In a leaked tape of one of the later screen tests, we see Hutcherson actually perform an elaborate fight scene against 4 stunt performers. He even does some pretty amazing wire work, flipping all over the place and definitely proving that he had the agility to take on Peter Parker. Even though he didn't win it in the end, he still impresses with his spider moves. But of course, Andrew Garfield wouldn't be the last actor to take on the iconic role, as in 2015 it was announced that a relatively unknown young actor named Tom Holland had earned himself a 6-picture deal with Marvel Studios to revamp the Spidey story once again. Not only would he be starring in his own Spider-Man movies, but he was set to appear in the biggest movie franchise of all time, The Avengers. The first time we saw Tom step into the role was in Captain America: Civil War. Only later did the studio release his audition tapes and screen tests, and it became immediately clear why they had chosen him out of over 7,000 other young actors. Aside from being a great actor and a charismatic guy, Tom had the physicality of the character already, which he proved by doing a standing backflip in a tape that he filmed from his home. He then went on to test alongside both Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, where he showed that he could hold his own alongside some of the biggest stars in the world. When we think about Iron Man, there is only one person who comes to mind, and that of course is Robert Downey Jr. RDJ's performance as Tony Stark is so iconic that it actually started the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's totally clear from the first moments of the first Iron Man film that this is a role he was absolutely born to play, and we can't imagine anyone arguing with that. And yet, when they were first in talks to make the movie, the studio wasn't quite so sure. Even though Downey Jr. had an impressive resume, his bad boy past led some studio executives to believe that he wouldn't be right for the job. So director Jon Favreau and the casting director decided to do screen tests to prove why they wanted him so badly. And it worked. As soon as he stepped on set, everyone in the room understood that something magical was happening. And RDJ himself said that he never felt a rush like that before in his life. All the way back in the year 2000, when it was announced that they were going to adapt the most popular book series in the entire world, Harry Potter, into a movie, there was only one question on everyone's mind: who would they find to play Harry, Ron, and Hermione? We couldn't imagine any child actor who could meet the fans' expectations of who they had pictured as the boy who lived and his 2 best friends. The casting process took over a year, and of course they saw every single 10-year-old in the United Kingdom. Finally, as it got down to the wire, they were able to get Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint into a room together, and the results were magic. They had the three young actors perform a scene together in the library and finally knew that they had their stars. Not only were they all great on camera together, each actor was so much like their character in person that the director and casting directors all knew that they had struck gold. It's hard to remember a time when Steve Carell wasn't one of the biggest comedy stars working in Hollywood. Ever since his iconic rendition of Michael Scott in the American adaptation of The Office, Carell has become a household name and one of our favorite people ever. One of the best Steve Carell performances of all time is, without a doubt, Brick Tamblyn from Anchorman. But what most of us forget is that, before that movie, he was a relatively unknown actor, whose biggest credit was as a correspondent on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. So instead of just offering Carell the role of Brick like they would today, they brought him in for a screen test. Lucky for us, we now have the footage of Carell's test, acting opposite Will Ferrell. It proves right away that he was one of the best comedians around and there was no other option for who could take on the lovable Brick. Tom Hiddleston has taken the character of Loki farther than anyone really thought that he would. Originally set out to be the antagonist to Thor's heroic journey, Hiddleston's Loki quickly stole the hearts of every audience member who saw him cross the screen. He added a level of humor and fun to what could, in another actor's hands, have just been another bad guy. But you might be totally surprised to learn that Hiddleston originally auditioned for Thor. That's right. He even went so far as to do a screen test for the Asgardian leader. To prepare for the role, Hiddleston trained his body, grew out his hair, and dyed it blonde for the audition process. And even though everyone agreed that he did a great job, he just wasn't right for Thor. And yet, when he was offered the chance to read for Loki, everyone knew right away that he was the only man for the job. One of the most important things an actor can do is to try and set themselves apart from the crowd in order to catch the attention of the casting directors. Take it from Jason Momoa and his amazing audition for the role that made him famous, Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. Even though Drogo only made it through one season of the notoriously bloody show, his performance made a huge impact on audiences everywhere. And when you check out his audition, you'll see why he got it right away. Along with the regular audition material that he was provided, Momoa also performed a haka dance, which is an ancient traditional dance done by the Maori people of New Zealand, usually on the battlefield in times of war. Momoa knew that Khal Drogo needed to be the kind of warrior that anyone would be terrified to face off against in a battle, and also the type of leader who would command respect from his troops and his enemies alike. By performing the haka, he also proved to the casting directors that he was willing to go as far as they needed with absolutely no fear. Titanic is one of the most famous Hollywood blockbusters of all time, and while its epic story is partially to thank, the rest of the credit definitely goes to Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio for their amazing chemistry and incredible performances. The fictional love story between Jack and Rose will definitely go down in history as one of the best, but if the casting directors had gone another way, who knows if it would have been the same. In this rarely seen screen test, we can see that Leo almost didn't win the role of Jack that would turn him into a Hollywood megastar. In fact, it almost went to Jeremy Sisto, the actor best known for his role as the less than lovable Elton in Clueless. Sisto made it so far in the casting process that he even tested with Winslet in full costume and on set. Kate fought hard for the role, and even though she was so young, she was convinced that she was the right actor to carry the film, and you can see it right away in that first screen test. While Sisto is definitely a good actor in his own right, it's clear that these two then 19-year-old actors don't have the same kind of chemistry that Kate and Leo would go on to be famous for. A ton of Hollywood's best leading men were considered for the role of Batman when it came time for Christopher Nolan to cast his genre-redefining movie, The Dark Knight. Not only was Christian Bale considered, but he tested alongside Fight Club's Ian Bailey and Cillian Murphy. And in this amazing footage of their test screenings, it's so interesting to see how each actor would have made such a dramatically different version of the Caped Crusader. While Cillian proves to be less physically intimidating, he is completely captivating. And Ian gives a less rough around the edges performance as the billionaire prodigy than Bale would eventually put on screen. Luckily for us, Bale won the role in the end, and Cillian went on to be absolutely perfect as the terrifying Scarecrow. Later in the footage, we also get to see just why Anne Hathaway was selected for Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises. Whether they won the role or not, it's clear these actors were destined to be in the spotlight. What do you think of these screen tests? Would you have liked to see Tom Hiddleston as Thor? Let us know in the comments, and hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with the latest from Screen Rant. See ya!